Tyson Fury and Deontay Wilder finally close out the final chapters of the trilogy. God, what a fight. I personally didn't think the third fight was going to be as exciting as competitive as it was. The first fight, I had Fury clearly boxing Wilder's ears off, minus the 2 knockdowns. I had Fury winning, but they had that draw. The second fight, we all know what happened with that with the TKO. So I didn't think that Wilder at this age was going to be able to bring anything different to the table, considering that he had zero tune-up to actually try to tune up his style anymore. But I was actually wrong, because he came up and did a few adjustments and actually made it very competitive for the first 6 rounds. So weighing in, both fighters are coming in at the career heaviest going into the trilogy. Wilder coming in at 238, Fury coming in at 277. But if we're gonna compare it to the last 2 fights, the first fight, Wilder came in at 212, then 231 for the rematch, and now the career high 238. Fury, on the other hand, also 256 the first fight, 273 the rematch, and 277 the trilogy. If we're going to look at what the advantages hold to coming up heavy on weight, Fury more or less boxed the first fight, and he didn't dictate the action. But after he got knocked down in the 12th and then came back and pressed the pace, he realized that the puncher in Deontay Wilder wasn't good fighting off his back foot. When you're a puncher, you're so used to fighting off your front foot because your whole career guys are so scared of you that you're the one backing them up, you're the one dictating the fight. So when you get pressed back on your back foot, typically by fighting on your back foot, you have to be able to counter. When both men weighed in, there were actually some concerns for me in regards to Deontay Wilder, considering that he came in at a career high at 238. I don't think it was the best idea to come in heavy. I think he should have slimmed down a little bit more. The reason is because in a rematch, we obviously all saw how Deontay Wilder was completely gassed. His legs were completely shot. I'm not going to go through excuses because I don't believe any of it. I understand that they felt like now he's got to come in a little heavier because he should be able to outmuscle Tyson Fury in some sense and press the fight differently. But we all see the body build of Deontay Wilder. He's not like a Manny Pacquiao where he's strong, bigger in the legs and then leaner in the upper body. Deontay Wilder's all chest, no legs. So how much would that have an effect on his performance going in? Would it gas him out earlier? Would it give him more power? Would he be able to impose his will a little bit more and be able to tassel Tyson Fury coming in? These were all questions that needed to be answered going into the fight. A few media outlets made a pretty big deal about Fury's weight going into the fight, since it was a career high also at 277, but really he only put on 4 pounds compared to his fight weight when he fought Wilder in the second fight, because he came in at 273. Leading up to the Prelude of War to Wilder and Fury trilogy also was how Wilder looked so good on the mitts, how he was doubling up his jabs, he was using angles, he was setting up his right hand, he incorporated hooks, he was doing cartwheels, backflips, everything, right? But let's be honest, anybody that's ever boxed, you understand that how you look on the mitts, how you look on the bags, how you look shadow boxing doesn't mean a thing until you learn how to incorporate those techniques into your sparring, which ultimately leads to how you look in a fight. It's one thing to run these choreographed mitt work, but if you don't understand the technique that you work and how to incorporate it under certain circumstances, under which situation, then all of that goes completely out the window. That's not. If I was Team Wilder, if you ask me personally, I would have took a tune-up fight. I would have took that step aside money from Fury. I would have took a tune-up fight, polish up my style, and then after the tune-up, I would go into the trilogy. You know, we can all remember back when Hatton was this rough, rugged brawler, and then he lost to Mayweather. Then Mayweather Sr. signed up to be his trainer, and he was looking amazing on mitts. He started doing all these crazy ass kung fu choreographed 1,000-hit combos, moving his head, using angles, just like, you know, how we see how Wilder looks on the mitts. He took a fight with Paulie Malignaggi, which had no power, but he was a slick boxer, and he looked okay. And then after that, he took a fight with Pacquiao. We all ultimately remember how the outcome was. As soon as he started taking a few shots, Senior was just screaming, "You gotta move your fucking head! You gotta move your head, son!" But when you've been fighting a certain style for so long, once you're under pressure, you don't have time to think. You're going to revert back to what your muscle memory is. You're going to revert back to what you know because you're going back into your survival skills. You know, we can even look back to Triple G. After a second loss to Canelo, he drops his longtime trainer, Abel Sanchez, picks up Jonathan Banks to try to clean up his boxing a little bit, change up his style, add more jab to the jab he already had, but he just wants to polish it up a little more, learn how to set up punches a little bit more. And look at the outcome of that. His comeback fight against Steve Rose, a relatively unknown Canadian with no punching power. He was outboxing him, landing huge shots against Triple G, and Triple G just pretty much tried to box him in the first round. Realized that the boxing ain't working, resorted back to what he knew: brawling, out-muscling him, ultimately getting with the knockout. Even with the Derevyanchenko fight, which a lot of people felt like he lost that fight. So as good as you look on the mitts, it's all about how it's going to translate over. And I feel like when you're that old and you've been doing something that long, like, I hate to say it, the cliche, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. Yeah, you can sharpen them up a little bit, but if you really think that one training camp is gonna be able to correct all your mistakes, as far as the rules engagement, I feel like Fury wasn't gonna change anything about what he did in a rematch to this fight, because he fought damn near a flawless fight the second time they fought. As far as Wilder, I feel like obviously we're not going to see this man start doing Mayweather pull counters his first fight back with the new trainer. So I felt like what was going to happen was that either one of two things. Wilder was just going to all out war the first few rounds, just try to take him out, or B, which I feel like this was what his approach was that they were going to learn how to set up that touch of death a little bit better. Set some jabs in there, maybe set up some hooks, feint a little bit more. I just felt like they were going to add a few more tools just to set up that right. Because if you spam that right enough, it only takes one to land with Deontay Wilder. So he doesn't even have to be accurate. As long as he learns how to set it up and disguise it a little bit better, I felt like he had a chance going into the fight doing that. The classic puncher versus boxer puncher. To me, the first 5-6 rounds was arguably very competitive. The unofficial judges had the fight practically even around that time. Wilder did come out with something new, but he was fighting at a very fast pace, a lot faster than what he did the previous fights. Even if we look at the punch stats in the rematch, since they only went 7 rounds, the first for the 7 rounds, Wilder only threw 141 punches. This fight, in the first 7 rounds, he threw 223 punches, which is an increase of 58.6%. So the pace was heavier on Wilder's side. He came out the first few rounds, jamming to the body. Everybody knew that he was trying to set up that right. And Fury's a very intelligent boxer, and he knew that also. The problem is when you only have one superior canine weapon in your arsenal, you don't have to be concerned about the hooks, the jabs, the uppercuts. The only thing you have to be concerned about is that right hand. It was more or less a double-edged sword, because what was working for Deontay was actually his ultimate downfall. He pressed such a heavy pace, and then he started finding a home for that right hand. And so he started spamming it. And when you're such a massive puncher, you put a lot of energy into them right hands. He was throwing fastballs. He was going for them 100-mile-per-hour fastballs. He was slinging them. And when you're such a big man and a slick fighter like Tyson Fury will make you miss, when you miss, you have to reset yourself completely, and that exerts a lot of energy. On top of coming in at the heaviest weight that he's never fought at, that's extra bearing on them legs. Typically, when you're a boxer and you're fighting a strong puncher, they tell you go to the body. And the reason why they tell you go to the body is because they want you to wear down the stamina. Once you wear down the stamina, you take away the legs. Without the legs, there's virtually no power left in those shots. The difference is Fury didn't have to go to the body in this fight, because he knew that as long as he could keep making Deontay spam that right hand and keep dodging them and slipping them, the one that lands out of the 8, he's got to reset his whole entire body for those 7 that he missed. To me, Deontay Wilder was practically completely spent by after the 5th round. He seemed so gassed out. He was just sitting in the corner, eyes completely closed. Didn't hear a single word that was coming out of his corner's mouth. I'm actually very surprised that he even lasted 11 rounds, and that shows the heart and determination and the will to win by Deontay Wilder, and that's something you got to truly respect, because he did say he wants to die in that ring before he wants the towel thrown in. Obviously, Fury also knew how to impose his weight and will over him. When every time he'll throw that jab and he'll tie up, he'll lean over, he'll tussle him, he'll wrestle him. He's enforcing all the extra weight for Deontay Wilder to have to endure to carry that 277 frame. Hell, he was 277 weighed in, so who really knows how much he was during fight night? He might have been 285, all we know. But, Fury fought a very intelligent fight. Honestly, I rewatched the fight again, and of course, when you're watching a fight live, anytime a punch is thrown by 2 giants, especially a monster puncher and Wilder, you're on the edge every single time. But I rewatched it, and really the only time I felt like Fury was really, really in trouble, or even almost lost. Well, we all know the 2 knockdowns, but he practically walked straight into that jab cross that Deontay threw, and it was a delayed knockdown. The first one rocked him, then he missed. He dies. The second one, he fell down. The second knockdown was more of like a clubbing shot. I think he was still on shaky legs, but I was watching his legs very closely, and surprisingly, the recovery rate of Tyson Fury. This man just got hammered by 2 of the biggest right hands. The round before, takes the round, goes to his corner, come back, his legs are back. He's dancing around, he's normal, his eyes. Typically, whenever you watch it in a hurt fighter, you don't look at his mannerisms in his upper body, his eyes. You look at his legs, you got to see how stable those legs are. Those are the foundations of what carries everything out. Fury, to me, was so surgical with that jab. That jab, he started getting away from it a little bit in the middle rounds, and Sugar Hill reminded him, he was like, that jab is there, keep sticking it. Don't neglect the jab. And after the fight, Fury did give praise to his cornerman that he reminded him about the jab. The thing about the jab was that it would take Wilder out of his rhythm. Wilder, for him to throw that right hand, he normally always has to throw that jab first to line him up to throw that right hand. He doesn't really land the right hand after a hook, or he doesn't land that lead right. So when you're taking that jab, you're taking away the rhythm of Deontay Wilder. You're punching between that jab. You're punching before that jab. You're punching after the jab. And also, when he's punching to the jab, Deontay Wilder doesn't have good footwork. So when you're punching the jab, he's lining him up to move to his right hand, and that's when he started hitting him a lot with the overhand right. And if you rewatch the fight, he hit him so many times when he did the throwaway the left hook to make Deontay move to his right hand, and then he'll either line him up with the straight cross, or he'll do the right hook, and it was landing for him practically for the whole night. The thing is, when you're a boxer fighting a puncher that doesn't have good technique, there's a few things to take into consideration. If a fighter doesn't know how to counter, as long as you're pressing him or as long as you're punching, you know that nothing's going to come fire back on you. So that's why after the second fight, Fury realized that, after the first fight, Fury realized that if he just made him fight on the back foot, for one, his balance would be off. For two, he's not a counter puncher, so he won't be able to launch anything back at him. So as long as he's the busier man, he's going to have the advantage. But on the other end, Wilder is fighting a superior boxer in Fury. Like, this man is so big, he shouldn't even be able to move or do the things he does. He was hitting him with like 4 or 5 piece combos. He was fighting him, he was jabbing him, he was setting him up. Then he was countering off his back foot. So when you're able to counter, you can dictate the pace or you can slow it down, because even when the other guy's launching his offensive, he has to think twice now, because you're getting countered. And Mayweather was the king of this because everybody said that they're going to come in and brown Mayweather, but Mayweather controlled the tempo because he was so good at countering. Once you start countering, people are going to think twice instead of just jumping straight in. All in all, I think it was everybody would agree that it was a great fight. The fight was practically one-sided at the fifth, sixth round, but the first 5 rounds, goddamn, were you on the edge of the seat. Do I think Deontay's career is over? I don't think so. I still call me crazy. I always thought that he could take Anthony Joshua, Andy Ruiz, because I feel like even though Joshua has better technique, like Deontay lands that right hand. I don't feel like Joshua's chin could hold up to it because he's already shown that. Hell, he got rocked by Usyk 2-3 times, and that's a smaller guy, cruiserweight moving up, and he's not even known as a big puncher. Fury, from what I understand, is he's supposed to take a fight with Dylan White, but I just can't see anybody taking him. Usyk's one of my favorite fighters right now, and although he's a good boxer with good feet and good stamina, I feel like Fury's just so goddamn big. He's gonna put that telephone jab on him, and he's gonna tie him up. He's gonna make it ugly. He's gonna wear it down. He's not gonna allow Usyk to fight the fight he did like the way he did against Joshua because Fury knows that he's gonna have to impose his will on him. Unlike Joshua, who was scared to impose his will on him. If I could change the course of Deontay Wilder's career from here on out, as in terms of how to train him, I'm by no means a world-class trainer, but obviously he's up in age now. He's not going to learn anything new. The things he is going to learn, it's going to be so hard to apply at the elite level, which is where he's at. You know, if you look at Jarrett Hurd, even when he lost the fight against J-Rock, he changed up his trainer and tried to learn how to box, and he said it's harder to learn how to box than it is to fight. It's harder to box than learn how to fight. And at this level, it's going to take so much time to correct all his mistakes. If I was Deontay Wilder's trainer, I'd focus a little bit more on the jab, but I'd put my main focus in stamina. Everybody knows that right cane is coming, and it's inevitable that it's going to land. The difference is Wilder only needs to land 1 or 2 right hands around, and he could fucking practically put you out the entire night. No count, TKO, KO. And if he had the stamina and had the legs for it to endure that for 12 rounds, I even believe truly in my heart that if Deontay had the stamina that Fury had in his Trilogy fight, he might have arguably taken it. Because in one of them rounds, I can't remember what it was. It was like the 8th or 9th round. I don't know, one of them rounds. Deontay had Fury in the corner, and he started letting off on a 1-2, 1-2, 1-2. And it was laying a flush, but the problem was by that time his legs were so spent, he had no muscle behind them shots. So if I was to go forth with Deontay Wilder's career, I focus more on the stamina. Everybody knows that Kane is coming, but can you stop it? You know, it's inevitable that you're going to get hit by at least 1 right hand per round. And that's all it takes for a monster puncher like that. But, you know, all in all, it was a great fight. It was a good fight for boxing. And, you know, it's only up from here. Thank you guys for listening. Checking out.